Udin, Amin Udin to take over this session.
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm just trying to just share my screen. I think there is some...
Yes, we are able to see your screen.
Yeah, so but I'm just trying to share my other screen, which is there. So let me just share my other screen. So I think this is better. Yeah, you can see the screen now, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think let me just also try and switch on my video just for... we are used to Teams, so it's a little bit of a navigation for us on WebEx, though, which is any which ways. Let's get started. First, I want to kind of like make a quick announcement. I'm just sharing my room with my kid as well. So if you hear some noise of kid calling out, my apologies on that. And I think let's get started. First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to present to the forum here across on this. Really thankful for that. And also thank you for taking time out to listen to what we have on security. So my name is Amin. I am the cloud solution architect with Microsoft, as introduced by a fellow colleague. I've been in the industry for like past 15 to 16 years across, where we've seen gradual growth of infrastructure start in from both typical hardware on-premise to all the way to the cloud. And today, what we will be seeing is what we call it as the Azure Security Compass. And the reason why we call this as a compass is because we look at covering end-to-end security across for this, right, for the customers across. Now, if we just go up in the security model in the cloud, right, we are all aware that it is going to be a shared responsibility model, right? When I say a shared responsibility model, is because in a traditional environment, what happens is, just give me 1 second. Sorry. So in the traditional model, everything was in control. That means the whole infrastructure, the people, the devices were all taken care by the company itself, or it was outsourced to a partner who used to deal with that. But with cloud enabled, what happens was that things were slowly beyond control, right? When I say beyond control, that means as a customer or as an individual, you did not have any control on where that hardware is hosted, what is that hardware, how are the physical controls put in place across for this, right? So this is what we call it as a shared security model or a cloud-enabled security. And here, if you're looking at this, right, if you see that gray blocks which are there, right, now these are blocks which are controlled by the cloud service provider. And there will be some of the blocks which are in customers' control, and there are partial blocks as well, where you look at basically defining the control between the customer as well as the cloud service provider. So one typical example, if I had to just give you across, was like this. If there was a server on-premise, right, the hardware, the OS, the security, the antivirus, the networking was completely in the control of that particular user or personality, right? Now, but when you get a virtual machine on the cloud, the hardware, the hypervisor, the place where the hardware is placed, the security controls for that particular hardware, everything is under the control of the cloud service provider, while the customer does not have any control here. But here what happens is that once there is a virtual machine given to you on that virtual machine again becomes your responsibility across, because cloud service provider will provide you that infrastructure to provision the virtual machine, but what operating system you are running, what data you are storing on that particular machine, the service provider does not have control on this, right? That means you are the owner of that particular asset across. So this is what is basically looked at as the shared security model in the cloud across for you on this, right? So where you have all of them interconnected using the cloud intelligence and capabilities. As we move forward, right? Basically, when you are looking at a security compliance or a guidance, which is there, we divide it in multiple blocks across. If you look at the left-hand side of the block, basically it talks about how we are providing tools, services, regions, and practices to the customers, right? And how those are being used by the customers to build a better security landscape project or posture for them on this, right? Because in a traditional model, what you do, you implement the infrastructure, you implement the security controls. But in the cloud-based environment, the responsibility of the cloud service provider is to ensure that they give you that right tools, sets, and services so that you can use that and secure your cloud posture across. And when we are looking at securing our cloud posture, basically it is on the right hand side of the block where you have models which are available where you can leverage to improve your security, number one. Number two, the whole capability which is split from a security standpoint goes in various buckets, or what we call it as governance, operations, identity, network, administration, storage. If we looked at the traditional model of infrastructure, the whole purpose of security was put a firewall in front of the entry point, and that firewall would be the guarding mechanism across. That was a traditional approach. That means if I try and break and make my way through that firewall, I was free to go anywhere inside the environment. But here, what happens is that we use a concept of what we call it as zero trust. That means that though you are an employee, though you are designated to be having access for those resources, there are checks at various levels which are done to make sure that you have the right control which is in play across for this, right? So that's how the whole control mechanism goes in from a cloud-based perspective across for you. Having said that, if I just zoom in and look at the attacks which have been coming, right? Earlier, it was more of an attack which was done to cause just damage, right? Now, the attacks have gone in to become more and more sophisticated across, because it's not about just attacking and creating damage. Now it is more about making money out of that whole attack, which is there, right? Now, everybody would have heard about the dark market products which are available, the darknet, which is there across, right? They are various services which are being provided, and customers are leveraging these services in some shape or form for unethical ways of trying to inflict, cause damage to others, and various other things, right? So if we had to just look at some of these examples, there was this zero-day attack, which was basically quite an expensive one, which cost up around almost 3,500,000 US dollars of value of vulnerability, which was there, right? So likewise, you have multiple attacks which go in with the rats capabilities, the denial of service attack, which is there, right? And the ransomware ones, which have been kind of like coming in. Now, each one, if you look at the whole thing, right? The spear phishing, the compromised accounts one, this again is one of the key areas of concern for employees, because for a human being, it is difficult to remember multiple passwords. I try to keep the same password for all my accounts, be it personal or official. Then what happens in that particular case, if one of that password gets leaked on the dark web, right, that becomes an identity for sale across. That means if I am a hacker, which and I just don't know how to sophisticatedly go and crack or get things done, I can go and buy passwords. That means I can go and have compromised accounts, which I can buy and use. And here, these employees who have taken those steps of trying to keep the same usernames and passwords, right, are at risk not only for themselves, but also for the organization as well across for this, right? While we are moving away from this, right, if you're looking at the whole transformation journey, which is being happen up across, right, the shift to the cloud will be with some change, but the existing security practices are going to be the same, right? One thing to note is that the technical debt of security issues can move from migrated workloads on to the cloud as well. That means if you are moving applications which are basically older, vulnerable across, you are just moving them from one place to another, right? That means it doesn't mean that all your security controls are taken and in place if you just move to the cloud. No, you still have to make sure that the security posture of that application is still in place, right? If I had to give you some examples, right, the attack techniques are basically to scan, exploit the hashes which exist on infrastructure as a service across, right? That, and how would they do that? Basically, they would do it when they are kind of like having a system which is not patched or it is not blocked, right? Also, the other method would be with the changed capabilities across for identities. You would have seen multi-factor authentications come into picture across for you on this. And I think I have a trivia on identity, but I will talk when we are in that place with this. But here, the whole capabilities which Azure gives you is completely unique, right? So for an enterprise transformation, if you are looking at basically engaging, empowering the customers, is moving with software as a service across for you on this, right? Then the other transformation, what we saw was the whole capabilities of having bring your own devices across. Then the Internet of Things came into picture, right? Then there are platform as a things. All of this created to become the modern perimeter of our enterprises. Here, if you are looking at the traditional ones, the entry and the access devices were limited, were controlled, were not accessible from anywhere. I had to go to my office, sit on my desk, log in with my computer, then only I was able to open through and work with the applications. But if you look at now, there has been blur of devices, and this blur of devices also forces organizations to look at a digital transformation journey just to be in line with the whole industry which is there across, right? So if I was like a traditional organization now, and I would say, you got to come to office, sit in the desk, and work only from there, right? It was cool, let's say 7-8 years back. Now it's not cool. People want to access things on the go. People want to have access to corporate devices which are there, right? And also, I think starting this year, March, industries which were not ready to empower people to work from home have started and taken the journey to empower everyone to remotely work across on this, right? So that's been a massive, unprecedented change, which nobody had expected across or even thought of, right? Forget about the IT industry, everywhere, right? There was banking industry, which was there. There was manufacturing industries, where you had skilled workers remotely working across performing tasks with the softwares and machines around on this, right? So that's been the whole transformation for the employees. But when you're looking at basically some of the roles and responsibilities which are there, right? The first thing is to look at validation across. As I said, zero trust means validation checks at every level across. Then you have the administration and the governance, which are taken into restrictions, right? Containment from a network standpoint, project-based engagement to ensure everything is in place is what was being looked at as part of this whole metrics of transformation journey, which is available to their customers across for you on this, right? Now, with this, there also has been a cloud adoption strategy coming back to our reference slide. If I just go to the common cloud adoption strategy, which is there, it's been very simple across, right? Now, I'm just taking one step back to explain this whole concept of the cloud mechanism which is available. This was where we were. That means it was like a private house for us. From there, we went to the cloud and we said we're going to rent an apartment. And the apartment did not have any furniture on that, right? Now, I said, is there a way I can just have minimal operational overhead while the heavy lifting of the whole infrastructure is taken care by the service provider, and that's where the platform as a service evolved. For this, the example was more of a furnished apartment. That means I could just walk in with my clothes in this place, and this place had everything for me readily available, where I can start using things across. But still, here I had to probably make my own food, which is there. And the next level was the SaaS-based applications, is what we call it as the hotel room. That means I just walk in, right from food to all my needs are just readily available and a call away across for this, right? So this has been the common cloud adoption strategies with the customers. And here, what happens is conversion of IaaS to PaaS to SaaS. You have certain paths which you'll have to take to convert your applications to do that, right? It is not a straight path conversion across for you on this. And if you're looking at a traditional model, again, this slide is to emphasize on the shared responsibility capabilities. If it is an on-premise, everything was available for me at my disposal. But if I'm running infrastructure as a service, right, this block of host network data center is by the service provider while we take care of all of the other components. But when I'm moving to platform as a service, this component structure changes. That means the operating system would be the responsibility, but the network controls, the applications, the identity would be a shared model with that particular service provider across. And when I came to software as a service application, I was completely onto this particular model of using infrastructure as a service across for you on this, right? So that's where we all started running through on a cloud-based adoption, which was going to our customers. Now, a quick view on what we have as the massive network infrastructure would still go in to this capabilities across, right? In Azure, what do we offer customers is this. We have the slightly old slide. This is not 54, but we have 62 global regions across the globe. We run our own undersea fiber cables connecting all our data centers across on this. There are almost 130 plus edge sites. So this is the hyperscale capabilities which we bring on the table across for the customers. And then let's start at what we offer from a security-based perspective. First and foremost thing, if we look at employee access, right? It's the first thing which is available is called, what we call it as the just-in-time access across for this. And this does two things. One was a traditional method where I had access to my resources. I'm an exchange administrator. I will have access to all the mail servers in the environment. Relevant, not relevant, no idea. People were given access. People used to work with those access, right? Then came the methods of kind of like attacks of password spray or brute force attacks. And here where the attackers were looking at trying to enter these assets with just making a simple combination of usernames and password, right? That means I just have to write a simple algorithm and the system will just keep trying, automated, no manual intervention required, end-to-end to make multiple combinations available. With just-in-time access, what we did was we said, you might be an administrator, you also might have an access to that resource, but when you need to access that resource, right, you will have to make a request. That means you will have to have a request done. So if one of the exchange servers, I have to go and make a change. I know the username and password to log into the server, but I will not have access to that particular server, wherein I'll go make a request. Once that request is approved and kind of like put in place, I will be granted access to that particular resource. Very good. Second question. If there is an emergency, should I be waiting for the approval? How is that go? Because this would become an operational delay, right? Here, what we do is the whole process is automated end to end. That means preset conditions defined, users self-service go make a request that checks the conditions for approval, automatically approved. Once approved, access is granted. Once access is granted, The same access is available for a period of time, and that access is automatically revoked from that particular thing itself. So complete automation end to end, less human interaction and intervention, better security controls is what this feature, which is very important for our virtual machines across. That's one. Second thing, there has to be an engine in a security module where that engine powers the whole intelligence to your products, right? Like a simple example, I have antivirus on my machine, and every day the agent which is there on that antivirus machine goes, checks the signatures and picks the latest signature. That means any latest threats which are available in the market, my system has picked up those and is all set for those particular threats. Likewise, this whole engine of Microsoft is powered by what we call it as the Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph. Here, what we do is we get signals from various particular devices, right? And these are just not limited only to, say, certain products, right? Because our product portfolio starts basically from Bing search engine to Office 365 or the productivity suite to gaming, Xbox to Azure cloud, right? To Dynamics 365, which is basically our CRM and ERP modules across, to our authentications, which are led by Active Directory, which is there right now. All of this gets analyzed with all the advanced machine learning and artificial intelligence based algorithms. Any anomalies detected are kind of like fired up as alerts across for this. And this engine becomes the core to power the security products which Microsoft has to offer to their customers, right? That's what this. And if I have to look inside a little bit more on the threat intelligence, right? You can see that you have a large set of data sets which are available. And what Microsoft has done is they have processes and tools built in so that the data collection and analysis is kind of like done deep inside that, right? For data collection and analysis, you have these capabilities and matching them.
Sorry, sorry to interrupt you. There is some voice disturbances from your side, like it is simply scratches is coming.
Yeah, so as I said, right, in the starting, I have a room shared with a kid, so probably you might think.
You not. I think there is some connection that by your plug something. Voice is somewhat.
Is it better? Is it better? Because
now it is fine.
Is it better now? Yeah. Sorry, I was on Bluetooth, so I think I just took 2-3 steps out, but now I'm pretty close here. So I'll stay here for the next of the presentation.
Fine. Thank you, Mr. Raman.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So while you're looking at data collection and analysis, right now, where's this data coming from? And this data is coming from each of these products which you're looking at, right? There is this Azure Security Center, which will give you the landscape of the security on the cloud. Identity is looked up with our Active Directory things. There has been ATP, which is like the advanced threat protection for all our endpoint devices and users. We have antivirus, which is helping protect the servers, Office 365. So this catalog of products helps you kind of like build up the whole thing, right? And here in the security scenario, what we basically do is one important thing which is there, right? Well, the correlation of activities between multiple devices is very, very important. And if you look at the whole correlation scenario, which is going up in multiple layers across, is unique, is because in today's scenario or in today's environment of users, what you see is disconnected systems. I have a Cisco firewall, I have Akamai load balancer, I have HP server, I am using something for hypervisor level, etc., etc. Multiple systems disconnected. That means the environment is heterogeneous with a lot of OEMs, lot of products. Do all of them talk to each other? No, they do not, because each one has its own individuality and things. If there is a threat in that organization, and typically threats go in something like a kill chain metric, which is there, wherein they basically try to get in, try to elevate themselves across, go through all of this. That means they go up the ladder, go through these particular things. And here, when they're going with multiple kind of records which are there and the services. If the systems are not connected, it will be very highly unlikely that somebody just walks in and is having a free lunch and just skipping multiple products and services across for this. But when we look at the whole mechanism of capabilities across, this becomes really unique to have a system interconnected and kind of having the whole intelligence built in across for you on this. Having said that, let's move to the next slide. Now, the slide can be a little overwhelming. The reason behind it is just we have bundled everything what we offer in one single deck. Don't worry, we will break this up into various other components across for you on this to help you understand each of those pieces, what we offer from a security standpoint. Now, the whole stress on this particular slide was very simple. We were never a security company across, right? But we had a lot of products which we had built in and used from a security standpoint. And we'll see each one of this as we go into the next step. Which is there, right? So that's where we will be moving up on the ladder, and we'll stop by at one of the important places, which is about the RBAC controls, or the resource roles controls. Now, first level. If I have, or if I am a user of an X resource, I would be only having access only for that, right? In a traditional model, it was everybody used to have access to everything. That means if I am in a traditional on-premise environment, if I was a domain admin, that means I had access to Exchange server, I had access to SQL server, I had access to web server. Any server domain joined, I would be having access. Would that be required for my role or not? Not necessarily, but having access was more of like a privilege thing which is there. But in the cloud, that doesn't happen. Here, we look at what we call at as the concept of just enough access. The first one you saw was just in time access. That means when you need access, you will get access. The second one, what we follow is the principle is just enough access. That means how much ever you need, you will get that. How would I do that? I would do that in what we call it as the resource role-based access control, or RBAC is what we call it. In RBAC, what happens in an Azure environment, the top level is the Azure Active Directory tenant. That means this is my unique identifier across. So I would not have any other customer with the same tenant across. This is my classification number one, the Active Directory tenant. Then I have global administrator. This is the guy who is like the super admin for this. Very sparingly used, not advisable to use any of this. Then I have enterprise groups which are there. That means I have classification of groups where I can have access to. And that goes on to a level of management and subscription across. Subscription is where your resource starts in for this. That means you have access to provision of virtual machine, storage, network, compute across on this, and that goes into what we call it as a resource group. Is basically a collection of resources. This can be various resources. This can be storage, network, compute, database, anything, right? So it's like a logical container I create. So in Azure, what we do is we start bottoms up. That means we say that this is X resource. And for this X resource, do you need access? Yes. Then what access do you need? Do you need an access for a reader, contributor, or owner? Plus, there are built-in roles which are available where you can say that only this guy is responsible for shutting down the VMs. Only this guy is designated to start the VMs. This guy is a developer. That means he doesn't need access to shut down or restart the VM. That is the level of control which is being provided. And as I said, right, just in-time access followed by just enough access is what is very much important for the users across for this, right? So that's where it comes in handy for you. Now, as we slowly move to our next block, which is going to be our governance, risk, and compliance. Again, one of the key factors which are there from a governance standpoint for any enterprise. What do we offer here? We offer various tools and services across for customers. The first one is what we call it as the Azure Security Center, which is there. And this product is unique to Azure. The reason behind it is it gives us a complete view of my security landscape, which is available on Azure for me. And also this spans up to on-premise based capabilities as well across for this. That's what makes it unique. Because whenever you are working with security products, right, first and foremost is multiple environments, and then you have multiple tools. That means for antivirus, you have a tool. For network monitoring, you have a tool. For Active Directory control logging, you have a tool for this. So each one comes with their own tools. It becomes very difficult for people who are managing them to understand and manage and move across multiple tools and resources which are there for this, right? And here, what we give is a platform which helps you understand where your security posture is right now. That means you're standing at X, you'll have to make all of these security changes based on standard best practices. And from X, you move to a place called Y. And that is what we call it as the secure score across on this. That means we will rate your security posture scoring. That's number one. Number two, we also help companies meet all of this security compliance, right? You might have heard about CIS, PCI DSS, SOC, ISO 27001, right? Now, these are all industry-based compliances which are available for users to kind of like take and build and comply to meet for a better security landscape, which is available for the customers across on this, right? That's what the whole landscape thing goes in. Then we have something called as management groups. So when you're looking at management groups across, in that management groups is basically a mechanism to kind of hold and kind of bring everybody together as part of this whole allocation. Because when you're looking at large organizations which are there, right? These organizations basically have what we call it as multiple subscriptions for dev, test, production, staging across. So classification so that you can better manage is done with the management groups. Then we have Azure policy. While you are empowering your users to be capable of doing self-service, be self-enabled to go deliver things, provision what is needed across. What's utmost important for organizations is that they have certain boundaries defined as part of their organizations, right? And as an employee, I have to be within those boundaries. Having said that, will everybody comply? No. Maybe 98% can comply for your policies and your guidelines. There will always be a 2% deviation. How will you control this 2% deviation? It's basically you will use Azure policy to set your guardrails around your things, your enterprises across. So I'll give you a simple example. You have a team of developers, and that team of developers is working on a key project where it says that data residency inside India is one of the key requirements. That means the customer, when he's signing that agreement, he says, whatever you provision and do should be within the geopolitical region of India itself, be it development, testing, staging, production. You can't go out of the geopolitical region of India. You tell the developers, they start doing it, and if there are certain things which are required, right, or any errors while provisioning, they go provision something which is in Singapore. That means they are out of that boundary, and there is a compliance deviation which you have just done up across for this. So how do you control that? You set those policies and you say that X set of developers can provision infrastructure only in 1, 2, 3 regions in India. Apart from that, they would not be able to go out anywhere and provision anything across for this, right? So that's where the whole set comes into picture across for you on that. Then we have what we call it as blueprints. And blueprints are basically done for repeatable customer-based deployments across for this. And when you're looking at the blueprints, it is all about how you can kind of like have repeatable deployments done, which are time and again done again and again as part of the whole environment for you on this, right? So that's the whole repeatable capability on governance, risk, and compliance. Next, when we go to our block is our operations capability. And when you're looking at security operations, the first pillar which comes up to mind is going to be the security center across on this, right? So what is that security center gives to the customers, right? It gives two things. It gives them the input on where they are from their security landscape and what is that they'll have to address to make sure that they have better analysis capabilities which are built in for this, right? So if you just look at the whole capability, what Security Central drives in is that it has a intelligence built in on this with all the standard best practices recommendations, be it the database. And most of the times when you're looking at an on-premise based capabilities across, it just revolves around two things. It revolves around what we call it as the platform which is hosting, which can be, let's say, the capability of infrastructure as a service, which are virtual machines. And then the next block is what we call it as the capability, which was more around the capabilities of virtual machines, network capabilities across on this, right? So here, Security Center is not limiting only to network and storage. It goes up to all the resources like containers, like IoT devices, like Kubernetes, etc. Right? That means all that landscape which customer has, including various other mechanisms, is controlled, and you get a complete visibility on all of this, right? The virtual machine behavior analysis, the network analysis, SQL analysis, and all of those get inbuilt, integrated into our system, which is important. That's one of the key features here. Then, while we go to our next block, is going to be identity and access management. And when we are looking at identity and access management capabilities, we have this product, what we call it as the Active Directory on the cloud, on premise. And when we are looking at cloud-based scenarios across, the first question customers basically ask us is like this, right? So they say, I have an identity here. I'm trying to build an application in Azure. Can I use that same identity here? That means I don't want to have users use two different names and passwords. Yes, you can do that. How will you do it? You sync your Active Directory, which is an on-premise, to Azure Active Directory on the cloud. Number one. You're done with Azure, then you have the other clouds which are coming in for this, right? Now you see all of these grayed out options which are available for this. Let's say you have a BYOD concept where you are asking users to bring in their devices which are connected to the cloud-based Active Directory across. And can you control that devices, ensure policies are put in and taken into consideration? Yes, you would be able to do that as well across. You have an SAP-based application which you are running, and that SAP-based application is wanting to use the identities which are there on-premise. That means single identity which is there. That can also be integrated and shared up across with this. So here, if you're just looking at from an identity-based perspective across for this, it kind of like gets you completely end-to-end managed. Now, what is the advantage if I am having identities on-premise? What is the advantage for me to sync it up on the cloud? First thing, your users don't have to have separate usernames and password. Good. But what else? Other things very important are that there are methods and mechanisms built in the cloud-based Active Directory which help you from mitigating certain key attacks which are there. So if I had to just call off the top 3 attacks, the first one is the password spray one across. That means I just build combinations of username and passwords. Then I have a phishing attack where you have emails which are being fished up with different capabilities, and there are leaked credentials which are there across. Right now, all of this have been the top attack patterns across. And if you just look at a password spray attack, it just says, I have 500 accounts and I will just run some random password generated by an algorithm to make sure if I click on any of those accounts. Believe me, within a certain span of time, this simple a tool which I can either download, build, or use can click and find accounts which have passwords which are set up very gently. That means even I don't have to go and search and figure out the passwords. These are also available rightly. I just take it, put it, and it starts running for it. Right? So this is what is called as a typical password spray mechanism across on this. And if I had doubt of your gal, that means if I just say my users and names with this combination, I can simply be able to crack all of that across. And if you're looking at an Azure AD perspective, which is being there from this thing, right? These are some of the password spray attacks which have kind of like gone inside the whole thing. And if you're looking at identity as one of the key considerations across, what we bring on the table for identity is this particular thing which is there. So with Azure AD, we help you synchronize the users. Once the users are synchronized, what is that next step? We help you provide is what we call it as the leak credential report. That means if there are compromised credentials which are synced in Azure AD and are available in the dark web, that credential report is provided to the users across for you on that. That's one of the important points which are there. Second, if there is a need for me to have two-factor authentication, I can seamlessly go ahead and build that with a few clicks. That means I can have a multi-factor authentication leveraged across for these capabilities. That is one. Third one, if there are common business applications which are available like single sign-on and other capabilities, I would be able to use that single sign-on capabilities seamlessly across with my third-party SaaS-based applications, right? All of that features comes in handy. Then there's something called as conditional access, which is there across for it, right? Now, while we're talking identity, I would probably talk about how we managed identities. You might have heard organizations doing or forcing employees to do password resets across for this, right? But if you're looking at Microsoft, we change our passwords once a year. That means if I have a password, for 1 year, I'm not forced to change. This might seem shocking to some of them. It's like, are you not security conscious? Why are you not asking your employees to change your passwords every month, every 3 months? most of the organizations do that, right? A lot of questions come in. The answer is very simple. The easiest and the fastest method to crack an identity is a password. That's very important. And when you're looking at identity, it is three main things which is being taken as an identity. The first thing is what we call it as what you know. That means it is a password that you know. Second thing is what we call it as what you have. It can be a security token. It can be your smartphone for a two-factor authentication. It can be anything. This is something what you have. The third thing what we use is who you are. That who you are is my biometric, my facial recognition, etc., etc. And the reason why we don't force employees to change passwords for a year is because that is the last authentication which we use. Our authentications are basically based on who we are with biometric, facial, and what we have. That means the smartphones, the security tokens, which we are carrying up across on this, right? And this is unique, and that is what we also tell customers to go passwordless across. Is what the term we use. And also, when we are doing all of this, one important point I want to just stretch on some of the capabilities which are there, right? While we have Azure AD for our employees, there's also partners who have been in play for quite some time now, because in a traditional enterprise model, you had only employees. Then you had outsourced employees coming. That means these are part-time employees used to come, deliver a few things, and just go, right? But they also needed certain access. So these were the partners. So you have what we call it as Azure business to business or B2B for identity for these employees or part-time or contract workers. Then we have Azure business to consumer, where people sign up for their business to consumer capabilities for various other methods of them, right? So that's where we have from an identity-based perspective. Then we go up to our next block, which is basically our administration block across for this. And if you're looking at the administration block, the first thing which is important is this highest protection for highest privileged access, which are there, right? Earlier we talked about how will you segregate and make sure how much or what is needed, only that access I get. Now, if I am a global admin or a tenant admin in what we call it in Azure as the privileged accounts, then I need to be making sure that these are highly protected assets across for this, right? And they need to be managed very well on that, right? So that's, and that management basically goes in capabilities of using various controls, like I said, right? The privileged capabilities of access, the conditional access is again one of the key terms which I would use for protection. And when you're looking at production based capabilities across, conditional access tells us that I will define certain conditions for people connecting. And if I am a high value asset or a resource, then those conditions are pretty much important for this. And those conditions are also defined with various rules which are given in the system for me. Simple example. if I have my office laptop and if I'm connecting the application from the office network, which is there, obviously I just have to do a single sign-on. That means I open the application, I'm connected. No ask of username password. But if I have the same office laptop and if I am connecting either from an airport or a hotel Wi-Fi, right, I would be prompted for a username, password, and also a two-factor authentication across. These are certain conditions which are available for users to control their logons. There are also certain advanced conditions which are available, like the impossible travel scenario. That means you're just sitting and from Bangalore today, I'm logging on to one of my service, which is hosted on Azure. And within 2 minutes, I just log in back to that same server. And this time I am coming in from an IP based in somewhere around, let's say, Delhi or Gurgaon. Then the system will block my access, right? It's highly impossible for me to have a travel done within 2 minutes from Bangalore to Delhi across for this, right? So these are some of the various controls what are available from the identity standpoint for us to look at and use up across on this, right? And having said that, the other important thing is about passwordlets for account protection, right? We talked about passwordlets, we talked about MFA, right? So how do we actually do all of this? They are features of Windows Hello. So Windows 10 has a feature called Windows Hello, where you can use to use your facial recognition, biometric, PIN to log in. Likewise, you have the Authenticator app, which you can install on the phone for multi-factor authentication, or you can even have a kind of a mechanism to kind of use third-party authentications as well across on this, right? So that's where all of these features come in very handy, and I would say organizations should be looking at implementing all of these security features across. Moving up the ladder, going back to our building block slide, and now going to our networking area. And when you're looking at networking, right, networking goes in like this, right? It's a cycle of using these 4 blocks. It has to connect, it has to protect, it has to deliver, and we have to monitor all of this. So this whole block or cycle is repetitive. And when you're looking at this particular block, you can see that there are various services which are called out from Azure, which will help you achieve all of these production-based capabilities across. And if you just go to one by one on this, the first one is what we call it as the DDoS protection, or the denial of service attacks which are there, where you have your systems which are built in, protected across for you on this. Now here, we do 2 things. One is protect, and second is analyze. That means in a denial of service attack, there is illegitimate traffic coming, hitting your, let's say, your website which you're hosting, and it is going to bring that website down or make inaccessible for other legitimate users. First thing what you want to do is protect it. That means whatever your website is being hosted, you want to make sure that infrastructure where the web, the app, the database is hosting is protected from these particular attacks. That's one. Second thing is, this is reactive. That means you are trying to protect from the attacks which are coming in. What is that proactive step? What you can do is, in Azure, we also give you a mechanism where this traffic is consumed by an endpoint, where that can help you take or give you inputs to analyze a pattern so that you can build proactive steps across for you on that, right? So that's how the whole mechanism goes in with the DDoS protection capabilities. Then we have the web application firewall. I'm sure everybody is aware about the web application firewall capabilities, where we have mechanisms built in where you can intelligently study traffic patterns and control the traffic which is being hit to your end. So this is targeted predominantly for web-based applications which are hosted on the internet, because when you are hosting these web-based applications, right, there is going to be a traffic pattern which is going to come and access this. And there has to be some intelligence which has to be built in, which should give you recommendations saying that this is a legitimate traffic, this is not a legitimate traffic. You might think of blocking it on this, right? So this is built in some of the standard guidelines of industry standard of what we call it as the OASP, where you have those latest security postures put in, integrated, and controlled seamlessly across on that, right? That's what is done with the web application firewall. Then we have, and everything is software defined in the cloud, right? So that means you will not have any web-based or any hardware appliances which are given to the end users. But here you have a complete software-based control which is provided. Likewise, there's also a software which is provided for the users to kind of like protect their firewall-based capabilities, is what we call it as the Azure firewall. Right now, this is both layer 3, layer 7 firewall, which is available on the cloud for you to control your inbound as well as your outbound traffic across for this, right? So that's an important thing. While you're doing this, is there another control which is provided by Azure to help me secure my virtual machines which are there? Yes, there is something, what we call it as the network security groups, right? These are primitive software-based firewalls which are available for virtual machines, where you say that they use the 5-tuple rule, in which you have the incoming IP, the incoming port, the outgoing IP, the outgoing port, and the destination of allow and deny on this, which is defined for this NSG-based rule across, where you can control what is coming into the VM and also what is going out to that VM across for this. There are also service endpoints which are provided to you on this. So think of service endpoints as more of like a public IP which is attached to an application, trusted and whitelisted across on this. That means this is a trusted IP. Any traffic coming from this IP is valid, and I am allowing this because that IP is whitelisted in my particular network across. Here, instead of using those IP concepts, what we use it is what we call it as the endpoints which are available across. And from the endpoint perspective, what we do is that there would be a HTTPS endpoint which will be there. Let's say it will, if you are provisioning a storage, it would be something like storage.azure storage.net, right? That would be like the endpoint. So any name which you are giving would be tagged up with that first block. The second block would be a common one across, and that is a service which is whitelisted, secure with all of the security conditions which are there. Along with that, what we also offer to the customers are basically from a standpoint of marketplace integrations, where we have multiple resources coming in from various security vendors and hosting them across is what we are looking at on this. Yeah, so that's where we come up. We go to our last block, which is going to be storage, data, and encryption. And when we are looking at storage, data, and encryption across for you, let me just build this slide. Is going to revolve around what are the storage capabilities which we are offering, right? We offer various storage capabilities, which include from massive data storages, is what we call it as blob, right, to tables, to queues, to file-based storage across for this, right? Now here, all of the storage have a REST endpoint which is available and can be accessed with the REST APIs which are there. Data at REST is encrypted by default. Data in transit, various tools available for users to put the encryptions in place. Likewise, you have authentication levels which are being integrated with the Azure Active Directory symmetric keys which are used. They are access signatures which are used across for this, right? So instead of you having a password, you will have a URL or an access signature where I can keep that rotating on periodic basis across for this on that, right? So this is all what we have to offer from a security-based standpoint across for you on this, right? So having said that, that brings end to my presentation, which is there. And any questions you have, we can go ahead and take it. So I think there is a chat window as well, which you can use and type your questions in the chat window. I think there's a question by Amit Kumar Singh. He says, can you suggest a few security areas which can be optimized to get secure cloud, right? So Amit, the answer is two things. One, whatever you are provisioning on the cloud, right? They are native security tools which are provided by the cloud service provider. Make sure you use all of them, and that is one thing. That's done. Second thing is, then there are tools like the Azure Security Center, which will help you understand where your security posture is across. I would recommend you to run that tools and then again take those recommendations to kind of like address all of those security queries. That is how you secure your cloud-based infrastructure. Thank you. Any other questions? Any tools available to check a system is secure or not? Yes, that's the tool what we call it. We called it as the Azure Security Center, or now with the new name change, which you did it last month, it's called the Azure Defender. So this tool will help you check your vulnerabilities for your infrastructure which you have provisioned on the cloud.
Ma'am, but mine is not over. I did not read. Okay, ma'am.
What is the disadvantage of using same password on different websites? Very simple. One of that account gets hacked, or if there is a leaked credentials across, that is up on sale. That means if I can use that, I can log into any of your other simple mechanisms. So let's give you a simple example here. You might have social networking sites which everybody uses, right? You use that password there, then you use your password for your email, you use your password for your banking as well. Now, same password, different sites. In case your social networking account is stolen or hacked, right? Then I can even get inside your banking detail or even your email across on that, right? So that's the disadvantage. I'm not sure what the question is. Says we use same address because we can remember. It's I don't know what the address means here for this, but I would interpret like this: keep different pass. Yeah. So if you're doing passwordless, nothing like it, right? Like as I said, right? So we don't have any, we go passwordless. So even for me to log into my laptop, I just have to have a facial recognition done to log in. So that's the reason we go passwordless with all of the capabilities of Windows Hello, Windows Authenticator, and other things across, right? That's the unique differentiation on going passwordless. Cloud security and cybersecurity, how far these two terms differ in context of security across, right? So cloud security, cyber security are, I think, pretty similar, while cyber security spans up across multiple products or portfolios, which is there, while cloud security just looks at up certain key components across. So I'll give you an example. Cloud security, if I'm hosting certain services on the cloud, I would look at securing it. Now, take an example. This application, which I'm hosting on the cloud, is accessed by users. That means I have another product, which is Azure Active Directory coming to picture. Then I have a device which is trying to access for this. That means I'll have to have another way of controlling all those devices. So cybersecurity is basically a very broad term across on the industry, while cloud security revolves around just the key components of the cloud-based things. Facial authentication is a bad experience, I think. Yes, couple of years back. The reason behind it is what happens in a facial recognition is the system builds up certain algorithm basis on various inputs of your facial points. That means it will map hundreds of pointers on your face, and it builds a certain mechanism to authenticate. I have a phone, and I was using for facial recognition to open that across for this, right? Likewise, even my laptop on that. The system was designed to do that. The system did not have an adaptive learning mechanism built in a couple of years back. I'll give you one example. I was using my laptop for facial recognition. Then one fine day, I got a good anti-glare glasses for me. I put that on, and I'm trying to do that or trying to authenticate. The system first time was not able to authenticate for me across. So I had to give that ping to go through that. But the second time the system saw, the third time the system saw, the system intelligently built its mechanism over a period of time across on that. And it said that, okay, he's wearing a frame, so a new model was built in for authentication. And I got, after second or third try, I got in with my new glasses. I changed my frame of the glasses. It was with a frame. Then I went on a pure frameless glass. Then again, the first time the system had a problem, but the system second time intelligently learned that, built it across. Facial recognitions were a problem some years back, but now there are strong machine learning algorithms inbuilt on that particular device. An iPhone, right, uses facial recognition across. In these lockdown period, right, I grew a beard, and the system was able to recognize me with that beard. Yes, it was. All right. So because those edge computing is now in that device itself. It is not going out for a reference on the cloud or any data center to build that across. With that, it becomes very easy and sophisticated. So what is the good technique for authentication? Good technique for authentication is three ways. As I said, what you know is a password, easily hackable. What are the other two options? What you have, MFA, soft token, smartphone, and what you are, your facial recognition, biometric recognition. So good techniques of authentication would be a combination of what you are, what you have, and the last one is what you know across for that, right? So these are some of the good techniques for authentication.
Good afternoon and thank you very much.
Any other questions? How key is shared in distributed environments, as there are many nodes, so it is not easy to transfer the same key to multiple nodes securely across for this. So I'm not too sure what the context is in this, but I'll give you an example of key things. What happens is a key is a secret, and that secret needs to be stored in some place. So let's say an example, I have a secret. I have to store it in a place. Where will I store that? I store it in a place where we call it as a key vault. That means that's a secure place designed to store only secrets. That key vault will not will give me a reference which I will get for that key. That means if I had to go and access that key every time, right, I have to use the reference which is provided for me from the key vault. And that reference can be a link, can be a certificate, can be anything, right? But it is not a username and password. I can use that. Now, tomorrow I realize this might be compromised. Is there a way I can just simply change that? Yes. So what we do is basically always have two references or two keys built in. That means with that, I can seamlessly do rotation across. For this, two things I'm addressing. One, I have a single reference point for all my multiple nodes to go and access. That means all the nodes, if they have to access that secret, they have to go to that destination, which it is accessible. That's number one. Number two, I have two of those. That means if there is a compromise, I can simply rotate it, right? Without any production downtime, I can change those secrets on the fly across on this, right? So that's how the whole shared key infrastructure works in across on this. All right. So I think we got 2 minutes left, pretty much on time. If there aren't any other questions there, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and you've been a wonderful audience as well on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amin, for your wonderful session. Hello, Amin.
Hey, sorry, I was on mute. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot. And I believe all the questions have been answered. And in case if you have any other questions, you can post it on over email, or you can post on the chat box. Now all the participants can leave. So, I mean, you can proceed. Could you share your PPT and 5 MCQ questions? I already spoke to Prajot regarding this.
Yeah, I will share that across for you with Prajot, and I think he will have that. I'll just convert this deck into a PDF and share it across to you.
Thanks a lot, Amin. Thanks a lot. You can leave now.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Yes.